You are weak because of your father asterisk. Robert Harrison was 56 years old when his teenage son finally said the words that had been hanging between them for years. Asterisk. You are weak because of your father asterisk. They were standing in the kitchen after another difficult conversation about Robert's reluctance to stand up to his own aging father. James Harrison was 82 and still the same demanding, critical man he had always been. And Robert still could not say no to him even now, even after all these years asterisk. Robert's son David was 17 and had been watching this dynamic his entire life, watching his grandfather criticize his father, watching his father accept it without protest, asterisk, watching strength dissolve in the presence of the man who should have built it asterisk. You let him treat you like you are nothing, David said, and his voice was not cruel but frustrated. And it makes you weak. Robert felt the words land like stones in his chest. He wanted to argue, to defend himself too, explain that it was more complicated than David understood asterisk. But the truth was, his son was right. Asterisk. Robert had spent 56 years being weak in the presence of his father, and that weakness had shaped everything about who he had become. Robert's father James had been a military man asterisk, rigid and demanding with clear ideas about what made a man strong. Asterisk. Emotion was weakness. Sensitivity was weakness. Asking for help was weakness. Anything less than perfect was weakness. Robert had grown up trying to be strong by his father's definition, and failing. He had been a gentle child who liked reading more than sports, who cried when animals got hurt, who wanted to talk about his feelings asterisk. Everything his father despised asterisk. So James had tried to toughen him up asterisk with harsh words and unrealistic expectations and a coldness that was supposed to build character. Instead, it had built a man who second-guessed everything, who apologized constantly asterisk, who could not set boundaries asterisk, who had learned that his natural tenderness was something to be ashamed of asterisk. Robert had become a good man despite his father asterisk. Not because of him asterisk. He was a kind husband to his wife Linda, a gentle father to David, a respected teacher at the local high school where students loved him for his patience asterisk. But he was also a man who could not stand up to his own father, who still at 56 felt like a disappointed child in James's presence that evening after David had gone to his room. Linda found Robert sitting alone. In the dark asterisk. I heard what David said, she told him gently. Robert nodded. He is right, you know asterisk. Linda sat beside him and took his hand. Asterisk. He is young and he sees things in black and white, but the truth is more complicated asterisk. Is it? Robert asked. Or have I just been making excuses for 56 years? Linda was quiet for a moment. Your father hurt you, she said, and that hurt does not just disappear because you become an adult asterisk. But David is watching, Robert said. He is watching me let my father treat me badly, and he is learning that this is normal asterisk. What do you want to do about it? Linda asked. Robert did not know that night he lay awake thinking about his childhood asterisk, about the father he had wanted, and the father he had gotten asterisk about. All the ways he had tried to earn James's approval, and all the ways he had failed asterisk. He thought about his own son asterisk, about the man. David was becoming strong and confident and unafraid to speak his mind. Everything Robert had never been asterisk, and he realized that David's strength had not come from watching Robert be weak asterisk. It had come from watching Robert be kind, from seeing tenderness, modeled from learning that strength and gentleness were not opposites asterisk, but Robert's weakness in the face of his own father was teaching David something else, that you could be strong with everyone except the people who hurt you. That was not the lesson Robert wanted to pass down asterisk. The next Sunday, James called as he did every Sunday, expecting Robert to come help with yard work. Robert's stomach nodded the way it always did. I will be there in an hour, he started to say, but then he stopped. Actually, Dad, I have other plans today. There was silence on the other end of the line. Other plans, James repeated. What plans? Plans with my family? Your family can wait an hour, James said dismissively. The lawn needs mowing. Robert took a deep breath then. I guess the lawn will need to wait until next weekend. Another silence. Are you saying no to me? James asked, and his voice had the edge that had terrified Robert as a child. Robert's heart was pounding. Every instinct told him to back down, to apologize, to give in asterisk. Yes, he said quietly. I am saying no. James hung up without another word. Robert sat staring at the phone. His hands were shaking, but he had done it. Asterisk. Linda found him in the kitchen? Asterisk, I heard, she said. He is going to be furious. Probably, Linda agreed. How do you feel? Robert thought about it. Terrified, he admitted, but also relieved. David came downstairs and looked between his parents. What happened? Asterisk. Your dad just stood up to Grandpa, Linda said with pride in her voice. Asterisk. David looked at his father with surprise. Really? Robert nodded. Asterisk. You were right, he said too. His son, I have been weak, and I am tired of it. Asterisk. For a week. James did not call. Asterisk. Robert waited for the anger, for the punishment, for the cold silence that had always followed his rare moments of defiance as a child, but he also did something new. He went to therapy. It was Linda's suggestion. You have been carrying this for so long. She said maybe it is time to get some help unpacking it. Asterisk. The therapist's name was Dr. Margaret Chen, and she was patient and kind. Asterisk. Tell me about your father, she said in their first session. Asterisk. Robert talked for an hour about the criticism, about the impossible standards, about learning that who he naturally was would never be good enough. You've learned to be small, Dr. Chen said, because being big felt dangerous. Asterisk. Robert had never thought of it that way, but it was true. He had learned to shrink himself, to hide his needs, to suppress his nature. Asterisk. All to avoid his father's disapproval. Asterisk. The thing about children, Dr. Chen said, is that they will do almost anything to earn their parents' love, even change who they fundamentally are. Asterisk. But I am 56, Robert said. Should I not be over this by now? Asterisk. Childhood wounds do not have expiration dates, Dr. Chen replied. They stay with us until we actively work to heal them. Asterisk. Over the following weeks, Robert began to understand things about himself he had never seen clearly. Asterisk. That his inability to set boundaries was not a character. It's a flaw, but a survival mechanism. Asterisk. That his constant need for approval was rooted in never receiving it from the person whose approval mattered most. Asterisk. That his gentleness was not weakness but strength. Asterisk. His father had been wrong about everything. 2 weeks after their phone call, James showed up at Robert's house unannounced. Asterisk. He looked older, somehow more fragile. We need to talk, James said. They sat on the porch. Robert's heart was pounding again, but he stayed quiet. Asterisk. You embarrassed me, James said, hanging up on me like that. Asterisk. I did not hang up, Robert said carefully. You did. James waved this away, as if facts were inconvenient. I raised you better than to disrespect your father. Robert took a deep breath. You raised me to believe that my feelings did not matter. He said that asking for what I needed was selfish, that being anything other than what you wanted was wrong. Asterisk. James looked startled. I raised you to be strong, no? Robert said, and his voice was steady. You raised me to be afraid. Asterisk. I never hit you. James said defensively. There are other ways to hurt a child, Robert replied. They sat in silence. Asterisk. Finally, James said, I did the best I could. Asterisk. I know, Robert said. And he meant it. But your best hurt me, Dad. It hurt me badly. And I am 56 years old and still trying to recover from it. Ain't. James looked away. I do not know what you want from me. Asterisk. I want you to stop criticizing me, Robert said. I want you to accept that I am different from you, and that is okay. I want you to treat me with respect. Asterisk. And if I cannot do that, James asked. Robert's throat tightened. Then I cannot keep letting you into my life the way I have been. James stood up. So you are choosing your pride over your father. Asterisk. I am choosing my health over your dysfunction, Robert said. James left without another word. Robert sat on the porch for a long time afterward. Asterisk. He felt sad, but he also felt free. David came out and sat beside him. Asterisk. That was hard to watch. He said it was hard to do, Robert admitted. I am sorry for what I said, David said. About you being weak? Robert looked at his son. You were not entirely wrong, he said, but I am working on it. Asterisk. I know, David said, and for what it is worth. I think what you just did was the strongest thing I have ever seen you do. Robert felt tears in his eyes. Thank you, Asterisk. Over the following months, James and Robert's relationship changed. Sometimes James would call and be civil. Other times he would slip into old patterns and Robert would end the conversation. Asterisk. It was not perfect, but it was better. Robert continued therapy, He learned to recognize when he was shrinking himself, when he was apologizing for things that did not require apology asterisk. When he was seeking approval instead of standing in his truth asterisk, he learned that breaking generational patterns was hard work, but necessary work. One evening, David asked him about it. Asterisk, do you think Grandpa will ever really change? Robert thought about this. Probably not. He said, honestly, people his age rarely make fundamental changes. Does that make you sad? Yes, Robert admitted. But I have also accepted that I cannot control him. I can only control how I respond to him. That seems lonely. It is sometimes. Robert said, but it is less lonely than abandoning myself to make him comfortable. David nodded slowly. I hope I never make my kids feel the way he made you feel. Asterisk, you will not, Robert said with certainty. Because you already see the pattern and you are already committed to breaking it. Asterisk, that was the gift. Robert could give his son not a perfect example, but an honest one. Asterisk, the example of a man who had been hurt by his father and was choosing not to pass that hurt along. Asterisk, who was learning at 56 to stand up for himself. Asterisk, who was showing his son that it was never too late to change. Robert was not weak because of his father. He had been wounded by his father, but wounds can heal, and Robert was healing slowly, imperfectly, but truly. He was learning that the gentleness his father had despised was actually his greatest strength. Asterisk, that sensitivity was a gift. Asterisk, that setting boundaries was an act of self-love. Asterisk, he was learning to be the man he had always been underneath the fear. Asterisk, kind and thoughtful and tender, but also strong, not his father's definition of strong. Asterisk, his own. This is a story about fathers and sons, about inherited pain and chosen healing. Asterisk, about breaking cycles that have run for generations. Asterisk, about learning that being different from your father does not make you wrong. Asterisk, it just makes you you. Asterisk. Robert was 56 when his son told him he was weak. Asterisk, but he was 57 when he finally became strong, not by changing who he was, but by accepting it. Asterisk, not by earning his father's approval. Asterisk, but by giving himself permission to stop trying. Asterisk, not by becoming hard, but by learning that softness takes courage. Robert's father had been wrong about what made a man strong, and Robert was finally learning what strength really meant. It meant knowing yourself, honoring yourself, protecting yourself. Asterisk, even from the people who were supposed to protect you. Asterisk, especially from them. Asterisk. This is what Robert taught his son, not through perfection, but through example. Asterisk, example of a man who was hurt, who carried that hurt for decades, but who finally decided he had carried it long enough and put it down to walk forward lighter, freer, and finally strong.